Hey guys, Graham and Chris here with you on a Thanksgiving edition of Out of Left Field. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. We hope that it was safe, enjoyable, blessed, and that everyone is slowly coming out of their food coma battle. I know we said it yesterday, but happy Thanksgiving to you and to your family.
Well, I appreciate that, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours as well. I didn't have the best Thanksgiving of all time. I assume the food was good since I made it, but I wasn't allowed to eat any of it, so it's a give and a take. But how about you? How was yours?
It was good, man. Went over to my fiance's parents' house and then hung out with some friends for dessert and kind of a little game night last night, which was a blast. So, we had a good time. But, the beauty of Thanksgiving is even though baseball isn't in season, there's still a lot of stuff going on. And obviously this is basketball and football's heyday. This is, when everything is really getting big going into college football, but we've got some baseball stuff to talk about. So jumping into it, let's kind of get the negative story that is on a lot of people's minds out of the way. Okay. And that is that there is a potential for a lockout coming in the next week or so, if the Major League Baseball Players Union and Major League Baseball offices can't come to a new CBA agreement before I think it was December 1st, if I remember saying the date correctly.
Right. So what's going to happen on December 1st if they don't come to an agreement between now and then is that the owners will vote on whether or not they're going to lock the players out. And, of course, that's something that happens in negotiation quite a bit. You see it in baseball, you see it in basketball, you see it in football. You don't see it in baseball as much. And this is what gives me a little bit of hope. I think that baseball is very cognizant of the fact that it would be very damaging to lock out or strike. Ever since the 95 strike, they've been really good about getting their deals done, getting everything squared away. Obviously, the players benefit from that sort of environment, and but I think that the only thing that's going on now is really some basic sort of
posturing.
Right.
I think it's a lot of posturing.
Right. And this is just basic negotiation, right? So they're going to see who blinks, and whoever blinks first is going to lose. Now, I doubt the owners are going to lock the players out, especially following this explosive World Series that we just had, where potentially baseball has gained itself millions of new viewers, 1 million new viewers. I mean, people who were on the edge and then saw that amazing Game 7.
Or at least are now interested in a team, or maybe they follow it a little bit closer than they have in the past. And I'm with you. Jason Stark for ESPN reported that after long negotiations into the night Tuesday, that the concern of a lockout is lessening. They don't think it will come to that. There may not be a deal. Now, here's the thing, that a deal doesn't have to be in place. It's a choice of if they want to vote for a lockout. But if a deal isn't in place, but it's close, which I believe that's what will happen, even if they haven't gotten every T crossed and every I dotted, that a deal will be close enough to where there's no need for a lockout, allow things to continue as such, and let's just seamlessly transition from one CBA into the new one. So we will keep you guys up to date on that if things change. Our guess is that it won't, but we've got a lot more going on this week on the show. More MLB trade rumors, free agency stuff. We're going to round out our trip through the American League East and talk about the New York Yankees, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Baltimore Orioles, and what we think that they need to go ahead and, for 2 of the 3, make another push for the American League division title and a spot in the playoffs. And for one team who was the big sellers at the trade deadline this past season, what they need to do to go ahead and get ready to roll for next year. And we also have, and we are excited about this one, having Kelsie Whitmore join us, who was a teammate of Stacy Piagno, who joined us a couple of weeks ago on the show with the Sonoma Stompers and with the U.S. Women's National Baseball Team. So she will join us at the tail end of the show as we continue our series on women in baseball. So, Battle, after we've gotten on some of the news coming up and we're getting everybody prepped for what is going to be a fantastic interview, let's put the ball in play on free agency and see what the heck is going on. The biggest news, if you will, that really came out this week, the biggest name that I heard signed, Andrew Cashner goes from Miami to Texas to the tune of $10 million for 1 year. The big thing here, and I hate to say it, it kind of proves the argument that you made a couple of months ago correct, but also that argument is really shaken because of the death of Jose Fernandez. But the Marlins are rumored to be sellers and even making a potential possibility of looking at moving Giancarlo Stanton, who has a $320 million contract that I would have to imagine they have to eat a decent amount of if they're going to move him out of South Florida.
Right. And, I don't want to harp on the conversation we had before about the Marlins and whether or not they were just being the Marlins again and having these fire sales that they seem to have every 3 or 4 years. But it really does seem that that's what's going on. They're not making any moves to put themselves into a position to move into the future as a competitive baseball club. You're not going to get an entire team of guys who are going to make you competitive for one big bat. And having no big bats in your lineup after getting rid of Giancarlo Stanton really puts you in a situation where you've got nothing to show for the $320 million that you put on the line. Obviously, the death of Jose Fernandez plays heavily into this, in my opinion. I don't think that if Jose Fernandez, who was a true ace, if he was still playing for the Marlins, I don't think Stanton would be going anywhere. I think that any GM worth his salt, even the ownership of the Marlins, would have to realize that they have an opportunity there to compete.
I agree. And
just get a few pieces.
There's a lot of things. They have some good pieces, and we're going to get into them next week as we round out the AL East this week. We'll move into the National League East, and then we're going to kind of go West Coast, and then we'll meet in the middle to go ahead and round out our breakdown. So to finish out the AL East, the number 4 team ended up being the New York Yankees. To me, is fourth place obviously doesn't look good, but if we look at really the way that they finished, they were making a push for the playoffs really down up to the last couple of weeks of the season. They have obviously they brought up Gary Sanchez, who finished second in the American League Rookie of the Year voting. A lot of pieces have come up, and not to mention that, but they also have had plenty of young pieces that came back to them in all the trades and moves that they made at the deadline. So let's take a look as we started doing a couple of weeks ago, and then we're going to get back into it now. Where do you think that the Yankees really need to focus to kind of round up some things to go ahead and put them in a position to do what New York fans expect of the Yankees and be perennial contenders for the playoffs and the World Series?
Well, the first thing that they're going to need to do is they're going to need to take a long, hard look at Aroldis Chapman. It's pretty obvious that they want Chapman back. It's pretty obvious that Chapman wants to go back. But when you got a guy like Kenley Jansen, who's there, who also wants to come back, and who, in my opinion,
now when you say Kenley Jansen, Jansen's over with LA. Are you meaning Betances?
I'm sorry,
because Dylan Betances was one of the 3. It was Betances, Miller, and then Chapman earlier in the year.
Betances is who I was talking about. When you got a guy like Betances who has a few effective pitches, you got to look at him being a possibility to be your guy. Now, the reason I said Kenley Jansen is because the Yankees are also in touch with Kenley Jansen in L.A., and they would prefer Aroldis Chapman, but they won't rule out Kenley Jansen, and it won't cost them anything to pick him up because Aroldis Chapman is going to come back really. It's going to cost them a draft pick to pick Aroldis Chapman back up, whereas it won't with Kenley Jansen. But you got to take a long, hard look at Chapman, and we've gone over and over and over how we feel about Aroldis Chapman and his ability to be a day in, day out closer. We just don't think he's there. So I think that's really what they're going to need to look at first and foremost is at a closer, and then bats. You know, we were right, I think, for the most part about some of the young guys coming up.
Well, to me, and I think we had some guys that we were impressed with. We liked Sanchez, obviously. I think everyone liked Sanchez. But what was difficult is that you had guys like Aaron Judge who came up and, you know, started off pretty well. And then, I mean, we began to see some huge chinks in the armor of what he was doing. And, you know, the gavel wasn't really, you know, coming down as hard as it was when he first came up. And that worries me, something that I talked with J.W. Gravely about, who had joined us when we did our Grade the Trade special, which you can find on our Facebook page, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham. Also, follow us on Twitter at OO Left Field. You know, they bring him up. I'm concerned about if he is really going to be somebody who can consistently be an everyday player. I don't see him up in the big leagues again, at least not on the starting. The starting 25 next year.
Right. And I think the Yankees agree with you, to be honest with you. As close as he came to leading the Rookie of the Year voting, he had, after that really explosive start, he had a slump that really showed kind of what kind of day-to-day player he was going to be. There's no doubt that he's a good ball player. There's no doubt that he's a good hitter. But can he be that every day for the Yankees? What I want to do, though, is I want to throw some names at you that are being thrown around in the Yankees front office, and I just want you to tell me what you think.
Okay.
So these are names that are getting thrown around right now. Yoenis Cespedes, Jose Bautista.
Yoenis Cespedes, I think, to me, if he wants to go to an American League team, makes sense because he's used to the New York market. He's used to playing in New York, granted on the opposite side, of town. They need more pieces in the outfield, okay? You have Jacoby Ellsbury, you have Brett Gardner. They don't have much in right field, and Ellsbury is kind of your everyday center fielder, but we've seen some injuries up there. I think he'd be a good piece. Bautista, I don't picture. We know there's been some concerns about his ability to, the way he handles things in the locker room. We know he's got a short fuse. He's an older player, and one of the big things that the Yankees did at the trade deadline was get rid of a lot of age to bring back youth. So Cespedes is still hitting lights out. He's played well the last couple of years. He was a big reason why the Mets made it to the National League Championship Series 2 years ago, and why they were able to do as well as they did this year with all the injuries that they had to that starting rotation. I don't see Jose Bautista being that piece who's going to garner the money that he wants. We know that New York doesn't mind paying it. I don't see it as being a wise choice. But we also know that they have offloaded some money because Brian McCann, who we discussed last week, has now been moved to the Astros, basically ensuring that Gary Sanchez is going to have that starting role coming into training camp or into spring training here in about 3 months. And
another couple of names that are getting thrown around that I think are not necessarily a bad move for the Yankees, just something that's a little bit more difficult for me to wrap my mind around are Matt Holliday and Mike Napoli. Now, we know that Napoli had a rough season. He had 239. He was only slugging 465. He was 335 on base. Not where Mike Napoli is used to being.
He's also 35 years old, so he's rounding third and heading for home in his career.
Right. And Matt Holliday had a similar sort of rough patch last year. But these are guys that they're looking at who could possibly be DH help for the Yankees. And in my opinion, I think that I would probably go Holliday over Napoli in that case. If I was looking just for a DH, I'd probably go Holliday over Napoli just because the power's there. But at the same time, you can't look past a guy like Mike Napoli and the postseason that he had, because he did much better in the postseason.
I agree, and they probably will need another piece in that DH role. Much as you and I aren't a huge fan of the DH, really it came down to McCann and Sanchez kind of flip-flopped roles in that DH spot. Obviously, Sanchez's bat was red hot, and then McCann was a switch hitter who they could use. The other thing that we have to think about is that the Yankees need a new first baseman. Mark Teixeira is retired; he's gone. Austin Romine, who also was a backup catcher, did some work out there at first base. I think he'll be a piece that they can use, but they're going to need to find something, and there isn't much out there. You're looking at guys like Ryan Howard. Napoli could be a guy that you put at first base if you trust him being your everyday first baseman. We know he's played well, but his numbers, was this year indicative of the trend that he's going to begin to take, or was it just one of those, hey, it was a rough spot, but I've got one or two more good seasons left? And that's a hard choice GM has to make, because he is going to go into his age 36 season coming up.
And how do you judge, really, based on that one season, how well he's going to be able to cope in the very competitive American League East?
Right. I'll tell you the one that I would be interested in, just because, yes, granted, he has had concussion issues, but was a very strong player for the Twins for a lot of years. Justin Morneau is on the market. He's 35, same age as Napoli, hit 261 this past season with a 732 OPS. Doesn't need to be an everyday player, but could sit well in one of those DH spots or something to add an extra bat where you can move guys around when you want to have him on the field defensively. But times you don't, he can sit there and he can hit for you. So I think we're in agreement that obviously they need some more bats. They need to keep some. They needed more youth, which they didn't have as the year began. And as we've been saying all season long, they've got to get a couple of more pitchers. Tanaka pitched relatively well. Sabathia is getting older. We're still not really sure what we're going to be getting out of him. And, Pineda, who knows? Nathan Eovaldi, he's gone. He's a free agent. I doubt they're going to re-sign him. Pineda went 6-12 this year with almost a 5 ERA. So one of the big things they always used to attract the big pitchers, Mike Mussina, David Cone. We saw Randy Johnson, there for a little bit of time. Obviously, Sabathia was a huge grab when they pulled him. Roger Clemens. I don't see those kind of names out there. So the question is, how much have they cultivated that farm system? How much did they get? Because when they traded Brian McCann, they got 2 arms. How much are they cultivating that farm system in the pitching side to go ahead and step up onto that bump every 5th day to put them in a position to make a run in what is going to be a very contentious AL East if this year was any indication of what we're going to see coming down the stretch?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And so there are guys in play, obviously, who are free agents this year who are going to be in play for the Yankees. But let's head north of the border real quick, and let's look at the Toronto Blue Jays and their really big free agent, and that's Edwin Encarnacion, who for the last 3, 4, 5 years really has been one of the best hitters in baseball. He's a fantastic ball player. He's a great hitter, and now he adds not only another great season, where he hit 272. He's batting on base 367. He's slugging 544 in that last 5 years. That's a 5-year cumulative total from 2012.
Yeah, very, very solid, which is what you need. You're looking for something that's solid and going to be consistency, and he's been a pillar of that in Toronto for sure. But
now he's got a huge walk-off shot in the postseason to add into his resume, along with his other 192 home runs in the last 5 years. So where do we look at Edwin Encarnacion? Where do you think he's heading? Does he stay in Toronto? Does Toronto put the money out there to re-sign this guy because it's going to be expensive? Or do they look for a guy who's just a piece? Well,
I've got to imagine that they make a run at him. They're letting some pitchers go. R.A. Dickey's obviously is gone to Atlanta. But they have a very strong core with that team. You've got Marco Estrada, Jay Happ, Aaron Sanchez, Marcus Sherman, guys who, when you hear those names, you think, man, good, solid pitchers. A couple of guys who, as our friend Adnan Verk mentioned, that he thought that they may have had a chance to have some Cy Young consideration, and they were, in the talk, not quite as heavy with what we saw this year from the Cy Young Award winners. But Troy Tulowitzki, Josh Donaldson, Russell Martin, Kevin Pillar. Now they have Melvin Upton Jr., Michael Saunders. You have guys there. Edwin Encarnacion is a huge piece. His primary role has been as a designated hitter. What I want to see is if you're going to pay him the amount of money that he's garnering, and a lot of guys are valuing him at a market value of around $25 million a year, he needs to be on the field more than, to me, just for his bat. I need to see him playing first base, being able to be out there to make an impact on both sides of the ball, not just in the box 3-4 times a night, 5 if you're on an offensive tear and he gets a chance to come up and do some damage.
No, I agree. The thing is that he's also heading into his 34-year-old season. Encarnacion's getting old. I can't really expect him to just fall off next season. And I think it's going to cost more than the Blue Jays are going to want to pay for a guy like him, especially since another guy that we've already talked about, Yoenis Cespedes, who's a better defensive left fielder, who's a better defensive outfielder, and has just as much pop in his bat, and is probably the top free agent this season.
And don't forget, Kendrys Morales was signed as well. So now you have Kendrys Morales heading there as well. So if you do potentially lose Bautista and or Encarnacion, you're getting something to replace him. Right.
And I think the best thing is that if you can pick up a guy like Cespedes, if Cespedes does decide to make this move to the American League and he decides to go to the Blue Jays, he's basically a replacement for Encarnacion. He's gonna replace Encarnacion, and while his bat might not be as hot all the time, he adds defensively to Toronto's lineup. And whether or not Joey Bats comes back to them next season, I really don't know that Toronto cares. If I was the Toronto general manager, I wouldn't care. I probably wouldn't make a run at him. They didn't make a heck of a run at Encarnacion. They only offered him $80 million. And I think Encarnacion believes himself to be worth a lot more than that. Yoenis Cespedes is going to be a more expensive piece.
Yes.
A much more expensive piece. But Yoenis Cespedes might be exactly what the Blue Jays need to make it past that divisional series.
It very well could. And I'll tell you a couple of pieces who I think they could use that won't cost them a ton of money, but who were consistent veteran players who performed well. Michael Saunders didn't have a top-notch season in the outfield, but still was consistent, hitting .253, had 24 homers, 57 driven in. So it actually hit about 20 points higher than his career average. But the other piece is one of the middle infielders, a guy who can play both sides and play them well, is Darwin Barney, a guy you don't hear a ton of, but hit 269. Not a big power guy, but a guy that can get on base. He can move. He can provide you some defensive help in the middle if you need to give Tulo a break, or if they want to give Devin Travis, if Devin Travis is healthy and playing, you want to give him a break. So I think those two guys are good, but the area that I want to see them focus the most, and again, we've talked pitching, but it's not starting. I think that if Toronto wants to compete, because where did they get hurt the most was in that bullpen. They have to be able to go out and get bullpen help. There's no way that I can picture Aroldis Chapman going to Toronto. I don't see it. But no. Do you make a move for Kenley Jansen? Make a move for Mark Melancon, or go inside the division and grab Koji Uehara? Drew Storen is out there. So there are some good guys that are out there, that can make some things happen. And to me, even Jonathan Neese, who was with the Mets this year, there are some pretty decent relievers out there that if the Blue Jays can pick up one or two of those guys and stick him in the pen. Jason Greeley, I believe, was re-signed. He had a solid outing when he went from Pittsburgh to Toronto. He really helped with that bullpen. If they can get that bullpen tightened up and their starters can improve on the way that they pitch this year, there is no doubt in my mind that we will see the Blue Jays once again vying for the top spot in the American League East.
No, I completely agree. It really appears to me that as you look at these teams that made the playoff by the skin of their teeth, got into those wild card game situations, and then won them, and then went out in the first round of the playoffs or lost those wild card rounds, the one consistent thing about all of those teams is they had pitching trouble, right? The Blue Jays, yes. The Mets, yes. The Giants, yes. All of these teams had problems in the bullpen, starting pitching, all of them. And I think that as we head into the 2017 season, that the teams that address that pitching issue, especially with the kind of guys who are available on the market right now, the teams who address that pitching issue are going to be the teams who we see move beyond that first and second round of the playoffs next season.
And one of those teams, and not as much with pitching trouble, never could really seem to get a solid core, yet had one of, if not the best closer in the game. And we've already been over what happened in the wild card game. No need to rehash it. And our hope is if Buck Showalter wants to come on the show, it's the one thing that we don't want to ask him about. He's been asked time and time again about Zach Britton. But the Orioles consistently were barking at the heels of the Red Sox and had a legitimate chance at winning that division. And now you look at the number of guys who they have that are prepared, that are free agents and maybe walking away. The first guy you think about is Matt Wieters, their catcher. A fantastic catcher, all-star caliber, has had a fantastic year, hit 243, 17 dingers, drove in 66, on base 302. It has been a great piece, and surprisingly, it's frustrating. Normally, when you have a good rotation, you want someone good to catch him. Well, right now, you've got a great catcher, and he doesn't have a lot of good pieces to catch. So, Mark Trumbo, going to be a free agent. They're giving him a qualifying offer. Chris Davis had a new offer recently. He's still there. Manny Machado, we discussed him plenty when the show began. He's young. He's fiery, but he's a damn good player. You have J.J. Hardy in shortstop, Adam Jones in center. You've got plenty of pieces going all around. Even Hyun-Soo Kim, who is someone that you thought may actually have a chance at the Rookie of the Year in the American League, hit 302 with 6 homers and 22 driven in. He's 28, but came from South Korea.
Right.
There's a lot of pieces that I think that the Orioles can use, but I want you to tell me where. Obviously, we know pitching, and we can get there because there are a couple of starters out there, and the one comes to my mind is Chris Sale or Jose Quintana that you could really put in Baltimore, and I think that it would make their case a lot stronger. If each of these teams makes the moves that we think is necessary, I think we're going to have a tight AL East again next year. But where do you see the Orioles needing help and Buck Showalter to finally get over that hump? Because Buck's a great manager, and it always seems like he comes up 1 or 2 pieces short of being able to make the move that he needs to put his team in contention for a championship series or the World Series.
Again, for the Orioles and all the teams that we've discussed really is I think it's going to come down to pitching. It's not like the Orioles don't have bats, especially with Manny Machado, especially with Mark Trumbo, right? It's not like these guys can't hit the ball. They're fantastic hitters. Even Kim, who isn't a power guy, he's an on-base guy, right? He hits. He's like an Ichiro, right? Who puts the ball in play when he needs to get on base. I think really it's going to come down to can they get guys in the bullpen who can set up for Zach Britton, right? Can you get guys who can come in the middle of games and set up for the guy who's going to shut it down, because that's what Britton's role is going to be.
Right.
And I know we don't want to talk to Buck Showalter about it, but I can guarantee you one thing, that he is never going to make the mistake of not bringing in Zach Britton in what seems like an obvious situation.
Right. And I'll tell you a couple of the pieces that I really would like to see them shore up. Obviously, they've extended a qualifying offer to Trumbo. The big talk has been that Atlanta is going to be the landing spot for Matt Wieters. There was thought that it would end up being Brian McCann because he started there, kind of bring him back at the tail end of his career. I'm glad they didn't go that route. I would love to see Matt Wieters in Atlanta as a kid who grew up loving the Braves, but I think him going there is going to be how I felt about Jason Worth going to the Nationals, that he will never sniff the playoffs again throughout his career. I would love to see him stick with Baltimore, even if it means taking a bit of a pay cut. Get him back, re-sign Nolan Reimold. If you believe that what he has coming up, if the numbers that he has had in his career, an average of 246, 56 home runs in his career, 174 driven in, was this year indicative of a downturn as he's going to be in his age 34 year, or can he do better? If he can do better, put him in left. Obviously, Hyun-Soo Kim is going to really be the main piece there. You have Adam Jones, you have Trumbo, but there may be times it's nice to give Trumbo a break and allow Reimold to take over some time in the outfield. The other piece that I want to see them grab is Tommy Hunter, 30-year-old reliever, pitched 34 innings this year. It's a piece that, if they can get another piece to hold on to, I think that there's a good chance with Tommy Hunter. Add him and one of those pieces that we discussed, especially if you can get Drew Storen, who has kind of gotten used to being a non-closer and setup guy, get him in there. It could be good, and we'll see if Tommy Hunter is going to stay with Cleveland or if he may come back on the market. So
here's a question that I have, because Buster Olney has said recently, as recently as 4 days ago, that the Orioles really need to entertain offers for Zach Britton. And the reason is because you have Chapman, Jansen, and Melanson on the market, and you could possibly pick up one of those guys as a free agent and get the kind of young talent that you need for Zach Britton to plug those holes that you have in the field or in the roster. What do you think? Because I disagree, personally. I think if you have a top-tier closer, you need to hang on to him. But what do you think?
Buster knows way more about baseball than you and I do. I think if we can hope to try and get the connections and the knowledge that he has of the game, I don't see as many glaring holes in the field. And to me, Zach Britton, similar to what we saw with like Craig Kimbrell, who, the Padres signed Kimbrell and then immediately trade him to Boston because Boston knew they needed a piece, and Koji Uehara wasn't going to be that piece long term. You need someone who you can rely on to close games consistently. If they think that Britton had a career year and that it was a flash and that's it, then move him while his trade stock is fine. Then go for it. But if you trust the pieces that you have, and if you can make the picks that you need, either bring them through your farm system, who you've grown, who you've groomed, who you've made into the player that you want, and you can get guys who have been out there who are free agents, hold on to what you have, because on those close games where you're facing the Red Sox and you're facing the Yankees if they make moves, if you're facing the Blue Jays, and you need to close out a one-run game to try and hold on to a spot that either puts you in the playoffs or sends you home, you want to have a guy like Zach Britton to turn the ball over to. And I'm not throwing shade at Buck Showalter for him leaving Britton in the pen, but my point is that if you have the ability, when the game is close, you need to have someone there who you can trust to give the ball to, can take you home. And in his case, roughly 50 different times this year, saved a game, giving up less than one run in every 9 appearances, as he was throwing usually less than one full inning of work and had a sub-1 ERA.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And we're talking about a guy who's had just a career year, really, as a closer. But that really rounds us out through the AL East. And so we're going to get to the National League East next time. And we've got Kelsie Whitmore coming up in just a few minutes. Graham, I know you had something else you wanted to say.
Yep. She's standing by with us. Wanted to just thank our listeners for taking time with us. Ask them again to please follow us on Twitter at OOLeftField. Also Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham. We've got some exciting new stuff coming up for you on the show as far as things that we're trying to do. We're starting to branch out. So really excited to bring some new and exciting stuff in the next couple of weeks. And wanted to give a shout out and a hello to one of our listeners, Frank Fiorino, an umpire I had a chance to get to talk with, who really enjoys the show, a guy who's really learning what umpiring is, how it's coming, a strong appreciation for the game. So shout out to him. Thank you for listening, and hope you had a happy Thanksgiving, as I hope all of our listeners did. Chris, let's go ahead and throw this to a break real quick, since we have Kelsie standing by. Guys, we'll be right back on Out of Left Field with Sonoma Stompers outfielder Kelsie Whitmore.
Hey guys, Chris and Graham here from Out of Left Field. The baseball season may be over, but college football and the NFL are just reaching midfield.
At thegruelingtruth.net, you can read Jaron Anderson's NCAA rankings or listen to Matt Andruscavage, Os Davis, and Aaron Zepnick as they get you ready for your fantasy football draft on Fantasy Football Weekly.
Plus, boxing coverage and interviews with NFL legends. All that and more at thegruelingtruth.net. The Grueling Truth on Facebook and at Grueling Truth on Twitter. Thegruelingtruth.net, where legends speak.
Hey guys, so we are back. Appreciate you hanging with us. Very excited to have another guest on the show with us, a teammate of a guest we had on a couple of weeks ago with Stacy Piagno, and Kelsie Whitmore joins us now, one of her teammates on the U.S. Women's National Baseball team, as well as on the Sonoma Stompers. Kelsie, happy Thanksgiving. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How about you?
We're doing okay. A little bit warmer, at least over on the East Coast in Florida, and I sounds like everyone's kind of getting the warmer weather. So white Christmas hasn't quite gotten to us yet.
Yeah, sunny and pretty breezy in California, so everything's going pretty well.
Very nice.
So, like I was telling you off before we sort of came on, we really just want to give you an opportunity to tell your baseball story, where you started playing baseball, how that progressed as you grew up, and then what got you onto the women's national team, and then obviously onto the Sonoma Stompers.
Right. Well, I mean, I started playing when I was 6, and I kind of always used to play catch with my dad and just be out in front. I always loved playing outdoor sports and being outside, and ever since my dad kind of got me started with playing baseball, I think I started off coach pitch first. I never really went into T-ball or anything like that, but once I started playing, I just never stopped loving it, and I fell in love with the game, and then never really wanted to quit because I've been in it even till now. And so I'd kind of say my dad was kind of the main person that got me started with it, and then of course that I enjoyed it. But it was I always liked playing catch and with him, and then it got into the point where I wanted to go into a league, and so I kind of got started with it. And then ever since then, I never really stopped and never really was told a lot of the times that I couldn't play. And I grew up with a family that they let me do, what makes me happy, and even if it's something where it comes to a lot of stress at times, and even if it's something that's different, they still let me do that. And then when I went to high school, I was a 4-sport athlete. I did volleyball my freshman year, and then I switched over to golf. And then in the winter, I did soccer, and then freshman year to senior year, I played baseball. And then I was the first girl in my hometown to play at that high school, and I think in the city, the first girl to play there, and to letter and play varsity baseball. And so it's a small town, and not super small, but to the point where I know a lot of people and they know me, and that was one of the good things. Well, one of the best things about growing up and playing baseball here in Temecula is that I ended up becoming like on the same high school team as the guys that I grew up playing with when I was younger. So which helped and made it, it made it a lot more fun, and to the point where I didn't have as many people telling me I shouldn't play because I grew up with a lot of them. So I earned their respect as I kind of grew up, which was nice, and it made things a little bit more easier. But definitely when I started hitting my junior year and senior year, there where I started to recognize the tension and the kind of like the politics and people who didn't support me. Like I would start to not be as oblivious to it as I was when I was younger. And so, as I got older, I started to see that a little bit more, but it didn't affect me because I then asked myself, like, if it was worth it, and it always was. And then it came to the point where I had to figure out what I wanted to do for college, and there was a point in my baseball career where I needed a break, and it was in high school because I ever since I was 6, I've been playing baseball. Like, it was nonstop. There was never a break ever, and I needed a break, and I thought, well, what can I do? And there were a lot of schools that wanted me for softball in college, and so I looked into that, and I kind of didn't look into any schools for baseball. There were a couple, but I didn't really keep going with it because I got so involved with all the schools that were interested in me for softball. And Fullerton ended up giving me the best offer that I could ever think of, and they respected me as a baseball player, and they didn't want to change me for that. And that was another thing I was looking for. And so I got that, and I was afraid that playing college softball would take away my opportunities to play baseball ever again. And luckily, and I'm like blessed enough to have opportunities still given to me, and one of that is with the Stompers, and that was definitely, that changed who I was as a baseball player and as a person, and so that opportunity was something that I don't think I could ever replace that with anything. And so being a part of that has always made me, love the game even more. And then on top of that, being a part of the women's national team, that is something that I know I want to do for the rest of my life until I have to retire or whatnot, until I could become the age where the older girls are. And so,
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of like my whole life. I mean, in a quick little story, but I could go more into details with it all. But yeah, that's like how it all kind of started, always with my dad, and just the way I always loved playing sports, but baseball always had my heart, and I never lost a passion for it.
And so I'm looking at your sports reference page now, and so you were 17 when you started playing for Sonoma, is that right?
Right, I was 17. Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. And how long before that were you playing for the women's national team?
Well, let's see. I made the team when I was 16 because that's the youngest you can be.
Right.
But I have been involved with them since I was 13 since I was 15 because they have like a national development team, and those are the younger girls. So I was always like with them. I'd go like every year, and it'd be like a weekend full of just development. It's like a camp, and so and then until we were old enough to try out, I made it when I was old enough, and that's 16 is the youngest you could be. So my best friend and I, we made it when we were both 16, and we were the youngest on the team. And so, yeah, it's been a long ride. It feels like a long time, but I feel like there's so much more to come forward.
Right. And
so I'm curious, I know you said that you want to be able to, kind of play as long as you can. What's your hope out of this? Obviously, I know you're looking into college, but what are you hoping to do with the Stompers beyond in your baseball career? Would you want to get into coaching? Where do you see yourself going in the game of baseball?
Well, what I want and what I see myself is I have a few options for this summer, where to play and what to do, and Stompers are definitely in the mix, and I want to keep playing with them. I want to pursue them because it's an independent pro ball team, and you can only move up from there. And my goal is, what I want to do is I want to play there for however long I need to, and I want to be able to grow as a baseball player mentally and physically, and just get to know the game even more, because there's so much you can know more about it. And I want to move up. Like I want to keep going with the game. I don't want to just settle. I want to keep going. I want to move up the level, and I want to do what every baseball player dreams of. Like, of course, I want to make it to the big league one day. That's obviously that's the goal that I would want, and I've always wanted. But for now, I want to focus on getting better as a baseball player with the Stompers, and however many years they give me, or however many years it takes until I can move up to the next level, and I want to do that. I want to keep going with baseball. I don't want to just settle with where I'm at right now. And career-wise, when I can't play, of course, obviously I want to play as long as I can, but when I can't, so far I'm thinking about coaching at a high level. I want to coach at a high level. I want to still stay in the game if I can't even play it. I want to still be out there, teaching the kids, and hopefully I can coach my own team of younger girls and just coach baseball, and we could be a team like that. That'd be something I would definitely consider possibly trying to do one day. But for now, I want to focus on becoming a better baseball player and grow, and to keep moving, to keep going.
And so, what would you say is your biggest challenge in the world of baseball? I've asked this question to a couple of people in different sort of positions in baseball, but I've heard For some people it's learning to play the game the way professionals play the game. Some people it's difficult, trying to overcome the stigma of the fact that you're female coming into a sport that's now a male-dominated sport. And for some people, it's just as simple as, just trying to be better every day and overcome the challenges that baseball presents as a sport itself. So what would you say is your biggest challenge?
I know this may seem weird, but my biggest challenge, honestly, stepping out on the field and performing and having to perform and feel like I have to be perfect has always been my biggest challenge. When I'm the only girl on the team, and when I step out on the field and I play, even before I play, I always wonder like what people are gonna think about it. Like I don't let it get in my head, but I always wonder like what are these people, what's the other team gonna think about a girl playing against them or with them, and stepping on the field and trying to do my very best, but trying to always have to feel perfect. That's the challenge. Like that's the challenge is just trying to just be me out there and to be able to perform. I know it may seem crazy. All you gotta do is go out there and play, but when you're a girl playing baseball, it's a lot different. When you got eyes watching you, you always have eyes watching you, wanting you to fail, and they want you to mess up. They want to see that, and it's hard to do that. That's what the challenge is like going out there and trying to prove people wrong. That's what my hardest thing I've always had to do growing up is trying to prove people wrong every time I step out on the field, while trying to enjoy it at the same time. A lot of people would tell me I get hard on myself, but I only do because I know I'm better, and it's because I love the game and I want to show my best. And so I think trying to prove people wrong, I feel like is the toughest thing, while trying to really enjoy it at the same time.
Right. And well, I can say this, that as a male player who has competed both at high level high school competition and also in collegiate competition, I never felt that sort of need to have to go out and prove people wrong. So I can really understand where you're coming from with that, because I can imagine, I guess that there would have been even guys on my team or guys on teams that I played against that would probably feel that way had there been a girl playing either with us or against us. So that's actually an interesting sort of side that I've never really looked at or never really thought about, I guess, because, probably a privileged point of view, but I've never really had to feel that. So it's really interesting to hear that's a challenge that you overcome every time you step on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, we're here with Kelsie Whitmore of the Sonoma Stompers. You can follow her on Twitter at Kelsie Whitmore. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at OOLeftField. And reminder, we're brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network. Follow the Grueling Truth on Twitter at Grueling Truth, and check them out at thegruelingtruth.net. So I know obviously you've won a gold medal in the Pan Am Games, a silver medal. You've played professional baseball. You've had success. You've had hits in professional baseball. What is, and obviously I know you said that you kind of play with a bit of a chip on your shoulder, which a lot of players say drives them, but what has been the most, kind of a highlight so far of your career?
Honestly, I'd probably say that the day I started, I had my first pro game. That was just, I never felt in any way I'd ever felt that game that day. I'll be honest, I was pretty nervous all day. I mean, my first pro game, it didn't hit me until like after the game, like, wow, like I'm a professional baseball player, like I'm living my dream, like right now, like I'm not at the highest level, but I'm where it's starting. Like I'm starting somewhere right now. And so I'd say that first game, my first pro game when I started, that was definitely the highlight of my whole baseball career, because I finally for once felt like proud of myself. Like, I laid my head on my pillow that night, and I felt proud of myself. And that's the best feeling you could ever get. I mean, having your parents and your family and your friends and your teammates be proud of you is one thing. Like, that means a lot. But when you can finally tell yourself you're proud of yourself, you feel like you've accomplished something so much bigger than anything. And that was definitely one of the highlights. And my first at bat, I never felt so calm in my entire life. I was in the box, and I was so calm. I never felt so. It was just so nice, so peaceful. But even though it was literally like, you know, in those movies where everyone clears their mind and they can't hear everyone. That was literally me. I don't even remember hearing the crowd. I don't even think about that I was in the game anymore. I just thought, all right, I'm here. I'm gonna look for my pitch and go from there. And it was, even though it's such a small and quick part of my life, it was definitely a highlight of it. And it was just after the game, the people that supported me, I had more supporters than people who didn't support me, and it was nice, and it made me feel like I'm special, and it was a great feeling. And so I definitely say the first pro game that I had, because that was one of the nights I'd never been so happy and excited, and I felt so happy in my life at the time, and I'm definitely looking forward to more of that. And so that first pro game will definitely be my highlight of my baseball career.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So one question that sort of is a question that we asked Stacy as well. When you were signed with the Sonoma Stompers, and you know, it kind of had sort of hit you that you were going to be playing professional baseball, and then you went to go play with them. Was it easier having another female player there, or did you feel like that made it more difficult? Like now, not only did you have to like compete and play with men, but also you had to sort of try to diverge yourself from this other female player as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at first, going there, it's kind of like bipolar in a way. When I went there, I wanted Stacy to be there with me, because I felt like, because all my whole life, I feel like I've always been going through things alone, you know, and so when I was there, I wanted someone who I could relate to. I needed Stacy. When I first got there, I was like, I need Stacy. Like, this is something that I've never done before, and I don't really know how to handle this. But I went through it, and I got through it, and it became easy as I went through it. And so at first, like, no, it wasn't a problem, and I don't think it made anything harder. But then when she did come, at first I thought to myself, like, what are the guys going to think? Like, when I came here, they were at first a little, like, not okay, and, like, if there's another girl, I don't even know what they're going to think about it. And then when Anna came, I was like, oh, shoot, now we have 3 girls. This is going to be insane. Like, I was kind of like, this is going to be a little different. I mean, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, at first when Stacy came on, I was like, I was a little nervous to see how they'd handle it. But it depends. Honestly, I think it depends who the ball player is. And Stacy is a perfect addition. If any girl were to come on, she's one of the perfect additions to come on, because she is a ball player, and she's not there to just mess around. Like, she's there to get better. And so once they saw that, it made things easier. It made things seem right. And so, yeah, at first I was a little nervous, and she was a little nervous too. Like, she'd be always asking me, like, how are the guys? What do they think of me coming and everything like that? But once they saw that we were baseball players, everything became easy, and it made things a lot more better, a better environment.
And I think that's kind of, in a sense, in a lot of people's maybe misconception of the game, is they think that if a woman has a chance to break in and break through it, and I'm sure in some instances the reaction isn't going to be as supportive, but it sounds like, you know, in your case, even though you had a little bit of that chip on your shoulder, that, you know, they were supportive of you and probably understanding of the way that you came in. We talked about this several times when we were discussing when we were going to be able to have you on and it fit your schedule. And we talked about what we were looking for out of this series that we're doing. And most of our listeners have heard, and I want Chris to be able to kind of give you the full explanation, but this was an idea that while we both support very strongly, really kind of came from his mind because of something that his daughter, who is, I believe, 6 or 7, so still very young, is already beginning to see in her life as she starts school. So Chris, before we kind of asked the question that we always usually end these on, I want you to kind of preface this for the audience who hasn't heard it yet, and just kind of remind everybody, why this series has been so important.
Simply put, this series is important to me because I have a 6-year-old daughter who wants to do things, wants to play sports. She's playing basketball now, and she really wants to play baseball. And she came home from school, and she told me that someone at school, now I don't know if this was another student or if this was a teacher, she wouldn't tell me, but someone at her school had told me that she can't play baseball because she's a girl. She has to play softball because that's what girls play. And that really upset me for a lot of reasons. It upset me as a father to hear anyone tell my child that there's something in the world that they can't do if they want to. It upset me as a lover of baseball because that's in my experience even is absolutely untrue. And it upset me just as a person because I realize I'm living in this society, I'm raising my daughter in this society where there are people who are going to tell her that there are things that she cannot do based solely on the fact that she's a girl. And so the question that we sort of always end, that we started always ending these conversations on really is, I want to give you like a few minutes in your own words, if you could just speak to young girls who want to play baseball or girls heading into high school, maybe heading into their college age, or people who are listening to the show, if you could say anything to them to sort of encourage them to do what they want to do, in your own words, what would you say?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is you got to ask yourself, is it really worth it? You got to ask yourself, is this something you really love? Like, because that's the first thing I asked myself. I asked myself, is this worth it? Like, I asked myself, Kelsie, is this worth it? And it was. And when you know it is, then when you answer, whatever your answer is, if it's yes, then you got to go. You got to go for everything. You got to go for it, and you got to not be scared. Growing up, it's like, playing baseball as a girl, like, it's gonna be scary. You gotta expect people not to like you, and that's what I did. I expected my teams not to like me, not to support me. I expected to be me in my own world, and that's how you gotta live it. You gotta focus on yourself. You gotta play your game, and you gotta respect it in the best way that you can. When you go out there and you play, you gotta you play with the way, you got to talk with the way you play. You can't mouth back. You can't say things back. There's going to be times when all the girls, all of whoever I would be speaking to, there's going to be times when you're going to want to say something so bad. You're going to want to say the worst possible things you can, but you can't. You got to let that go, and you got to focus on yourself and your game. And because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is where you go with it, what you do and what you love. And if you really love something, don't let someone else take that away from you. So if you love baseball and if you want to do it for the rest of your life, then you got to take the chances. You got to take the chances because the chances will be worth it. And there may be times when you may be the only one that supports yourself. There may be times you're the only one that's even there, getting anything better or even worse. But no matter what, you gotta stand up for yourself, and you can't be afraid of people not supporting you, because you got to expect that. Because as girls playing a sport that's never really played by girls, we have to do it for ourselves. We have to stand up for ourselves. And just like I said, you got to go back and you got to ask yourself, like, is it really worth it? Do I love this game? Because if you don't love it and you're just going to go out there and just play to play, like, you got to go out there playing it with the love you have with the game. Because it's only going to show yourself that you respect yourself and that you respect the game. And so, for all the girls, if whoever would be listening to this, if you really love baseball and you have people that are telling you can't do it and you shouldn't, well, they have no right to tell you what you can't and what you can do. Like, you're the only one who can control that. I mean, at the end of the day, you're either going to be happy or you're not. So if you do what you love, then you'll be happy. And if you don't, if you listen to other people, you're not going to be happy, and it's as simple as that. And so, I mean, I just say, ask yourself, is it really worth it? And if it is, you got to put full throttle on it, and you never let go, and just keep going with it. Keep going with it until you tell yourself that it's time. Until you tell yourself that it's time to let go, and you'll be proud of yourself. And that's another thing. You'll be proud of yourself that you didn't listen to those people. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't just play baseball for myself. I mean, that is one thing I do play for. I do play for myself, but that's not the only thing why I play. The other reason why I play is for the younger girls that, like, look up to me. Like, they're another thing that is, like, my world. Other than baseball, like the girls that want to play baseball, I want to be there for them. I want to play for them because they need that person. They need that someone to look up to, because I never really had that. And so when they go out there and play, like, play for themselves, but play for the other girls, so we can have everyone playing baseball. And so, I mean, I would just say that, like, just don't give up. Just keep going, even as hard as it may be, even as much of a grind it may be. It's all worth it. If you love it, it's worth it.
Well, Kelsie, we can't thank you enough for being on. That was extremely well said. I know I have to imagine that, you know, at roughly you're at 18 now, I believe, that you probably didn't think your freshman year of high school that you were going to be, you were going to be in a position to be a role model. And for any of those parents listening, if you have young daughters, older daughters, to hear a young woman who is embracing the opportunity to be a role model the way that you are, it's fantastic. And I think it goes to prove, and I think Chris will agree, it goes to prove that it's very true. Women can do whatever they want, not just in the game of baseball, but in life. And, the way that you are attacking the opportunity that you have is a testament to why you've had this opportunity and why they continue to be there for you. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you guys talking to me.
It was an absolute pleasure for us, guys. It's been another episode here of Out of Left Field. Please follow Kelsie at Kelsie Whitmore. You can also follow her teammate Stacy Piagno at Stacy Piagno, and check out our Facebook page, Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham, for that interview and many more that we have. We hope you all have a safe and happy Thanksgiving weekend, and we will see you next week on another episode of Out of Left Field.